think one of the best points that you've made today is a problem within CBP, and that is these agents, the turnover and the rotation, and you don't know who to call. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know how we fix that, but I think that's an institutional problem within Border Patrol that we need to fix and bring people that know the area, hire agents that are from New Mexico or from Arizona or from Texas who speak the language and can fit in better and they know the terrain. The National Guard, I agree with you also that I don't want to see them pushing paper. I don't think that's what the Guard is trained to do. And I assume you agree with that as well, that these Guard forces coming down should be in a more operational capacity than sitting behind a desk. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I definitely would, yes.
Yeah. And then finally, you know, I know the Arizona law is controversial. I think it's a response to the federal government not doing its job because we should be enforcing the law, and we're not. We had the director of ICE come out just recently saying that he may not even enforce. If the Arizona law is enforced, he's not going to help in terms of taking these illegals and deporting them. And that's a total breakdown in the system. I assume you disagree with that, too, the fact that the director of ICE would make some sort of comment like that.
Well, I don't think it's helpful. No.
You mentioned the idea of them actually taking over some of the ranches on the border, and I think that may be, unfortunately, a more well-kept secret. But I have heard anecdotally of cartels buying ranches on the U.S. side of the border so they can more easily facilitate the crossing of drugs. Do you have any anecdotal information?
I don't have anything on the U.S. side. But within our site, there's a peak called Pataikachi Peak. That ranch came up for sale, and I'm told by the Mexican ranchers down there that the person who bought it has ties to the drug trafficking organizations. And I mentioned my neighbor south of me is being harassed on a constant basis, and he's about ready to give up, and we're worried that, you don't know who buys these ranches. Our ranches nobody wants to live down there right now because of what we're going through. They've taken away every reason that you'd want to live out in the country. And so who's going to buy them? You have to be suspicious of anybody who's going to buy one of these ranches right now.
And I think they're destroying our way of life
on
this side in the United States. And it makes sense for them when they have billions of dollars to buy these ranches on the U.S. side to facilitate their trafficking.
I think it's something we really have to watch.
And that's a great local issue that a lot of people up here sitting in Washington are not aware of, and thank you for bringing that to us. Ambassador, just a couple of quick questions, and thank you for your leadership on the Merida initiative. I know you spent a lot of work and hard time putting that together. You talked a lot about the southbound traffic, which I agree, in terms of guns and cash. That cuts them off if we can get their cash going back into Mexico. The best teams down there, I think, are working pretty well. I'd like to see that enhanced more on this side. But what do you have to say about on the Mexican side in terms of, don't they have a responsibility to provide inspections as well with traffic coming from the United States into Mexico?
No, absolutely. And there's no question about it, and they've got to build up that capability. And as you know, it used to be that you could just drive across, you just get waved right across the border with not even the most cursory of examinations 20, 30 years ago. That's the way it worked. And I think that whole culture and that whole notion of border crossing from north to south has to change, and definitely. And I think the Mexican government acknowledges that they have a responsibility. But while they are building up that capability, I think we can also be helpful.
As my colleague from Florida mentioned, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen in 2 years politically down there. And I know you probably can't answer this question, but President of Mexico serves for one term, a 6-year term. I'm very concerned about who the successor is going to be and what the climate's going to look like. I'm also very concerned about the influence that Hugo Chavez has in Mexico in terms of the political process. And I think the worst thing that could happen would be if a Chavez-backed candidate won the presidency in Mexico. It would take not only the Merida initiative down the wrong path, but I think from an economic standpoint would be a disaster for Mexico. Would you care to comment on that?
as we both have said, it's difficult to foresee what's going to happen. But what I would say is, first of all, Mexico has consistently and constantly over a 70-year period changed presidents every 6 years. There's not been any interruption to that process since 1934. Secondly, the idea that any Mexican government would emerge that was under some kind of foreign influence or backing is just totally alien to my understanding and experience with Mexican politics. I think they're very proud. They're very proud of their own system and their own country, and whoever becomes the next president of Mexico is going to be his own president.
I guess my question is, do you believe that there are Chavez forces though at play in Mexico?
If there are, I don't think they're particularly significant.
In closing, you mentioned a strategic patience with Merida, and I understand implementing this is an enormous challenge. I get that. Yeah. But there are a lot of us running out of patience, and the American people are on this issue. I would encourage you to move this thing as quickly as we can.